Everybody out there in the real world, this is Darren Austin Hall coming to you here with another Wisdom Warrior transmission. And today I want to talk about something that's really important. So I feel like this is going to be one of the most important videos that I've done in quite a while, because I'm going to be trying to tie together a lot of things, so bear with me. So our world continues to spin in so many different ways right now. It really seems like we're living in obviously very momentous times, and there's so much incredible things happening, but there's also some very, very significant challenges. And I want to set the context that before I talk about the dangers of anything, like the dangers of the metaverse, I want us to bring a sense of lightness and levity here, because I don't want to be doomy and gloomy. I think it's important to set a context up where we take things seriously, but I also want us to remember that human beings are incredible, magnificent, divine beings. That in all my studies of ancient wisdom, one of the best things that I've come to know is that humanity is something magnificent, and that we were designed by something very, very divine. I really have a deep connection to Gnosticism and the ancient mystery schools of Eurasia, and the whole notion that we were designed by a goddess called Sophia or Gaia. And I really feel that that has been something that I've lived in my life increasingly, especially as I've moved down to Costa Rica to be closer to her, to be closer to the reality of her nature. And through that sympathetic resonance of living closer to the sacred ecology of the world, really feeling my own beauty and the beauty of those other humans around me being galvanized. But in lieu of that, in lieu of the fact that we have this tremendous movement occurring on the planet, where I think a lot of truly awakened human beings are starting to understand that the environmental crisis is actually a crisis of opportunity, and that it is truly Mother Earth herself, a living, sentient, planetary mother, trying to get our attention and trying to show us that to be cohabitants on her world, in her soul, requires reverence and respect for her ecological laws that we've transgressed for a very long time. And the pendulum is swinging us into truth right now, to really come into a right understanding of what it is to live in alignment with her. It also is important to note that in all of my studies of ancient wisdom, including working with many different teachers, indigenous, mystics, I've come to realize that we're living in an extraordinary time where many, many prophecies are converging. And a lot of these prophecies speak of, indeed, a harrowing adversity before us, but an adversity that is actually challenging us to come into a whole new notion of our power, so that we can actually start to overcome great tyrannies around us that have been caging, limiting human conscious and genius from being properly unfolded. And it is our destiny to overcome these, and through the overcoming and strength that we learn, that we are empowered through facing this adversity, that we develop the brilliance and the knowing how to really create a new reality, a new earth of enlightened consciousness, of tremendous rapport with the nature, and also the revelation that the whole idea of ascension, of humanity going to a higher dimension or a higher stage of our evolutionary development, has also been noted to be a process that the planet herself is going through as a sentient planetary being. And in some ways, she's taking us on this ride, and she's catalyzing this evolutionary leap that we're taking forward into what Sri Aurobindo called superconsciousness. And I think that's important to note, so that we anchor ourselves in the earth and root to rise with her, that we need her, we need to be close to her, to really understand what this whole ascension process is all about. It's not something to just hodl in our humanity about and to become more insular, more self-absorbed as a species, which has been one of the great problems that I've tried to note, the human supremacy complex, where we've kind of aborted ourselves out of the web of life of Gaia. It's actually the very opposite. We're supposed to find a way to reintegrate with Gaia so we can truly learn how to rise with her. So that being said, I want to take us back to something that I had referenced a while back when I gave a talk on AI being the pinnacle of misogyny. This was something that was put forth by John Lam Lash. If you don't know John Lam Lash, I highly recommend reading his book, Not in His Image. He's one of the truly remarkable humans who's gone back and reconnected us to the story of Sophia. And some of you may have read the Sophia Code, which is kind of a new agey extrapolation, and I'm sure it has its own merit, but John is really steeped in the actual nitty-gritty mythology, the reality of the historical development of our connection to the goddess that is Earth. And I don't think it's a coincidence, as John pointed out to me, that the first ever AI robot, I don't know if you remember, it was toured around as this kind of dawn of a new cyborg civilization through the media and stuff. I don't think it's any coincidence that that robot was called Sophia, or Sophia as John likes to denote her name being the name of a goddess and not a human. That robot was called Sophia. Isn't that interesting? And if you delve into a true understanding of how world politics work, I think very highly of the work of the Dark Journalist. If you haven't followed him on YouTube, he's done a lot of amazing work illustrating how secret societies and esoteric societies are pretty much what politics is all about. You know, they're probably aware of this Sophia story, and they're probably very aware that the Earth is going through an ascension process right now. And as Rudolf Steiner was noting with his rendering of the forces of Ahriman, which is the kind of force that is behind controlling technology, there are forces of this on this world, not necessarily of this world, that are trying to stop humanity from ascending. So with all of that context in mind, we come to the Metaverse. And firstly, I find it really strange that this thing was rolled out right after, Facebook has just been absolutely lambasted in the media. In some ways, I was expecting Facebook to be kind of like obliterated and even shut down with all the corruption that has been outed with Facebook in the last few years as pretty much a tool of the military-industrial complex. I found it really striking that all of a sudden it was rebranded as the Metaverse. And I recently watched videos of Mark Zuckerberg rolling this thing out, and very disturbing videos. And then, of course, you look at movies like Ready Player One, which I recently saw and was disturbed by, and just tracking the increasing development and interface of technology with humanity, and this kind of rhetoric that's put forth in the media in the realms of the environmental crisis, that humanity is this big problem, this kind of subtle, or not even subtle, it's a gross level of misanthropy, which means hatred of humanity. And if you've seen some of my other videos, I go into how science and modern understanding of reality has truly received a transference of Christian dogmatism and religious dogmatism, and this kind of misanthropy, this idea that humanity is originally sinful. You see this projected, or rather transferred into theories about AI, and how AI theorists write about how humanity is just a bunch of flesh machines that need to be improved and augmented, that were inherently deeply flawed. Ray Kurzweil, who's like the father of AI, writes a lot about how scared of death he is. you start to really witness how there is a tremendous fear of nature and a hatred of nature within science itself and within technological development, technology being the projection of these scientific beliefs. If you go onto my website, darrenaustinhall.com, which I highly recommend, and you go onto the blog, Sophia's Smile, Reconnecting to the Goddess, I've written a blog there where I go into this very deeply. And one article I talk about the misogyny of science, this hatred of the feminine and women that's inherent in the scientific method. And I share a very disturbing quote by Francis Bacon, who created the scientific method, where he talks about putting nature on the rack so we can rape and torture her for her secrets. This is the inherent belief system that science has. And when we see this rolling out of a metaverse, which is literally the matrix being implemented in our reality, we are witnessing the ultimate hatred of nature. The idea of creating a whole artificial reality, Derrida's kind of theory of the simulacrum in its most visceral expression. We are witnessing the final endgame of hatred towards the feminine, towards the goddess, which is the earth. And we have been conditioned for this through years and years and years of disconnection technology. This phone that I'm speaking through, ironically, is one of those technologies. The internet and all of these things have incredible merit to them as well. Truly the work of truth is a dance of balance. And there's a good and a bad to all of these things. But we need to get really, really clear right now, because there's a lot of things being propagated into our reality with the power of the media, with the power of Hollywood movies and pop culture, that are not being questioned, that are being just thrown upon us as if, hey, this is where our reality is going, the Great Reset, Agenda 2030. We're being told by elite factions who have, during this pandemic, pretty much seized so much more control over the resources of our physical reality. And they're starting to implement a new world order. And they're doing it in this kind of shiny, seductive way. But behind the scenes, they're also doing it in a way where those who are opposed to this reality, they're increasing the levels of censorship and starting to exile these people. I myself have received tremendous censorship. I still cannot even, my ad account on Facebook has been permanently disabled for years because of some of the opinions that I've expressed. And what is dangerous and what is concerning me about this is that there's this furthering digitization of our reality. And I even think of cryptocurrencies, which I'm involved in, and I see the merit in the potential for a decentralized system. But I also see that cryptocurrencies, and particularly NFTs, are creating this kind of lust, this greediness for wealth. And the NFT sphere also is an incredibly strange sphere to me, because so much of it is about buying assets that don't physically exist. And this whole obsession with people and children creating avatars to now relate to in a physical world. Very disconnecting, very strange and dangerous. I had a conversation with a friend, and when I bought an NFT, when I delved into this world and was exploring it, and admittedly I was exploring it because I felt, wow, there's an opportunity here to be involved in a new expression of wealth. And when my friend showed me the virtual world of the sandbox, which is this reality where you can literally buy digital real estate that doesn't exist except in this kind of digital world. And then he showed me, and you can relate in this digital world by putting on this helmet and this full body suit and pretty much live out your reality in this virtual world. I was really fucking disturbed. And then I recently saw the movie Ready Player One, and wow. We need to be very wise, A lot of this stuff is being thrown at us as like, oh, look at the wealth opportunities, look at NFTs. As artists, you can now have so much more power because you can sell in this new flexible, nimble environment of the digital sphere. And I'm sure there is some really cool things that can happen in that realm. But it's also conditioning us to be pretty much the living embodiment of the World Economic Forum's Agenda 2030, which is by the year 2030, you will own nothing and you will be happy. And I've been kind of still trying to wrap my head around the NFT thing and why people are so excited about it, because there is a lot of buying nothing in it. And yes, I know there's this whole amazing thing about the restructuring of the economy, and there's tremendous opportunities in that. But I'm also want us to be very concerned about what are we being conditioned into? Are we really sitting with this deeply enough? Are we really, really investigating the why? I just did this amazing authentic relating training, and it was all about getting into the why. Like, why are human beings doing this? What is their story? What is the story behind the belief system? And if you followed my work, you know I've investigated the why of science and technology very deeply through the work of David F. Noble, through my studies of media information technoculture at university. And I can tell you there's some significant blind spots there, some deep, deep psychological trauma that our human species have been carrying and carrying and carrying and carrying through generation upon generation, and has not been processed, it has not been worked on. And my fear is that the metaverse is one of the ultimate projections of a trauma that we have been conditioned for millennia to hate ourselves, to hate the physical body, to hate the physical dimension, to hate and forget about the earth. The environmental crisis is but evidence that we have been conditioned to be weaponized against our great mother. We have destroyed and raped the planet to the point where she's virtually hanging on a thread. And to me, we should be going in the whole other direction. We should be actually trying to find ways that we limit our technological usage in social media world especially. And how can we actually have true, intimate, connective experiences with our humanness, with our very deeply traumatized, wounded humanity? How can we do that on an individual level through reintroducing, or rather galvanizing, the science of peace of which meditation unfolds, contemplation, reflection, doing emotional, alchemical work to heal the generational wounds that have brought us to this point where we are collectively insane as a species, as Eckhart Tolle has put forth? How can we catalyze a network of eco-spiritual centers where people can go, leave their phones, leave their VR helmets behind, and sit in the advanced technology of Gaia, the technology of nature that is way more advanced than any metaversing that we as a species can ever put forth? I'm sorry, this is my opinion, but when I stand in front of a tree, I look at that tree and I am in awe. That is a technology to me that is mind-blowing. When I look, as I was the other day, and sit in front of powerful rivers in Costa Rica with waterfalls all around me, and I'm in awe of the network of water systems. I'm in awe of the mist, the sky, the sun, this interdependent ecology, the mind-blowing intelligent design of nature. And I can sit there for hours in absolute awe of how advanced that technology is. And the greater awe, the more important awe of realizing we as human beings, we didn't create that. We need to be in the natural environment because it deflates our human ego. It deflates us, it diminishes us so beautifully, because then when we're diminished enough, we can fit once again into the ecology. You see, we've made ourselves so inflated, this human supremacy complex. And if you understand how schizoid complexes work in psychology, the misanthropy, of course, the idea that we hate ourselves through all this religious indoctrination of original sin, that when we have been taught for so long to hate ourselves, of course we're going to swing into the excess of a supremacy complex. That's how it works. It goes back and forth, swinging the pendulum. That's why Buddhism was all about the middle path. It realizes when you're in the middle path, that's where you find that vertical path of verticality, of evolution, of being in your truth. And so I really feel a part of an outlier culture right now. I've chosen to move to Costa Rica. I'm choosing actually to move right now deeper into the jungle, deeper away from civilization, to start planting the seeds of an earth community where we can live and be in awe of nature and get back to the simplicity of how do you grow your own food? How do you interact with this incredible natural technology of soil and permaculture and the most advanced technology that Mother Earth has? Can you guess what is Mother Earth's most advanced technology? Beauty. Her beauty. When you sit in a natural environment like I have the great blessing and privilege to do right now, when I can sit in the high hills of Costa Rica and look at a huge landscape of valleys and mountains and jungles all the way to the ocean, that beauty is my religion. And I want to get in touch with who created that. Who created all of this amazing natural technology? Wow. I want to be more connected to that. And after a weekend of doing authentic relating with fellow human beings, I don't want to connect to avatars. I want to connect to the real flesh and blood of a human face that I can see right before my eyes, shimmering between joy and wounded trauma, and how can I hold a space for them to come into more wholeness through the haven of my heart. We are up against something here. It's ourselves and our own woundedness that is unconsciously acting in great peril to our futurity. It has tremendous resources now. We are an incredibly powerful species considering how much control we now have over our physical reality. The environmental crisis should be enough evidence of that. Our irresponsible use of that power has led to the devastation of the ecology of the planet to the point where it's almost uninhabitable to us. And when you look at the leaders, the so-called leaders of our culture, the corporate kings and queens, and you take stock of their behavior, remember, always discern a person's integrity by their behaviors, not their words. And when you see Jeff Bezos spending all this money and Elon Musk to take rides to outer space, off planet, abandoning the earth, that is more than enough evidence to show their true intentions. I'm going to leave it here that I'm personally feeling the call to diminish my use of technology and to diminish, in no way will I ever be metaversing. I'm going to flat out reject and resist that. And it's not to say I'm going to be a Luddite and reject technology altogether, but I'm recognizing that we need to shave off some of our time spent in that world, and we need to inflate and bring back and strengthen our connection with nature and with the earth. And I'm wondering who out there is feeling that too. I feel like a lot of us have moved to places all over the world now, outside of cities, away from the civilized world, because you're feeling that call too. And I want you to feel emboldened in that call, because I think there is something else happening on the world. That with the birth of the metaverse and a whole new world of artificial reality, there is the birth of a new earth happening concurrently, where people are returning into the arms of Mother Earth in a whole new octave a pastoral natural civilization where so much beautiful evolution of the human soul is going to occur, is occurring. And I'm really excited by that. And that's truly my passion. I dig people like Henry David Thoreau. I dig people who made that choice when they looked at where modern civilization was heading. And they said, you know what, we've missed something here. We've colonized and destroyed all the indigenous people, the people of the earth. And we need to go back and try and get their message and embody that message in our own ancestry, looking into our own indigenous roots. Because that voice of the indigenous is still not at the table. It's still not making decisions about the meta stories of our world and where our civilization is being driven. Do you see a single indigenous voice being centered at the World Economic Forum and the Agenda 2030, which is the great reset of our world? No. That should tell you a lot. I'm going to leave it there. Really open to hearing lots of your comments about all of this. And again, I don't want to fearmonger too much. I'm very hopeful, and I think this is an amazing opportunity for us. As all conflict is, it's an opportunity for us to heal and to grow more whole. So this is not necessarily a huge conflict to be afraid of with the rise of the metaverse, but it's something we have to soberly look at and take seriously. And I do believe, and I'm devoted to the vision of a beautiful humanity coming into a whole new evolution with the earth, because of the revelation that the earth is actually awakening right now into a whole new stage of evolution, and she's taking us into this ascension process. It's not simply some cosmic thing. It's not about getting off planet and becoming starry-eyed mystics that are floating in the ethers. It's actually about maybe even the path of descension, a little deeper into what Gaia is all about and the glory of what she's trying to do right now, that our ancestors, the ancient ones, were prophesizing. And the last thing I'll leave you with, if you want a little more medicine on that, I released a whole double album, Monorail Creation, all about Sophia, the evolution of human consciousness. And you can go and have a listen and let the medicine of those songs work on you. Sending a lot of love to you all. We're being tested right now in big ways, and I hope you're finding the means to talk to each other and connect on these things. We need to be more connected. We need a religion of humanity, a religion of the earth now more than ever. And I'm ever more optimistic that all these adversities being